Okay, so there's a new trailer for the latest Chainsaw Massacre, Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. Now, I've watched the trailer and I think it looks pretty awful, but that was no great surprise considering the basic plot synopsis was leaked last year at some point online from someone who attended a test screening. This trailer absolutely confirms that the plot leak was 100% accurate, which isn't a surprise to people like myself who had no reason to doubt that plot leak was accurate in the first place, but at this point the trailer's come out and it's confirmed it all. So I thought we'd have a look at the trailer and break down what I think about it, because it really does look pretty awful. And I'm going to say at this point also that I don't think that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre ever warranted becoming a franchise in the first place. It never really warranted having sequels. I think the original 1974 film by Tobe Hooper is an absolute classic. It's a masterpiece of horror. It was very much, in my opinion, a self-contained, one-and-done kind of deal. I don't think there was any need to expand upon it, particularly. Having said that, I do think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, if you will, is very entertaining. I'm hesitant to say it's a great movie, but it is entertaining, and the reason that works as a sequel is because it's less of a sequel and more of a straight-up parody of the first film. It's a comedy, really. It's a horror comedy, and I think it works as a parody.
I'm the Lord of the Harvest.
Who's that? Some new health food bunch?
Ow, 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 ow! He did my plate! Oh, my brain is burning! Non-flashback! Non-flashback! Oh! Ow! Leatherface, you bitch! Oh! Look what you did to my Sonny Bono wig do! Oh, God damn, I can't believe it! You're gonna have to buy me a new plate cover! You have to buy me a new plate cover, Leatherface. Oh!
Great grandma in Chainsaw Heaven.
But everything that's come subsequent to that initial sequel, I think, has been a massive waste of time and a fruitless attempt to recapture lightning in a bottle. Nonetheless, they continue to try to recapture that lightning in a bottle with countless sequels and remakes and reboots ever since, and it's never worked. And this latest attempt also doesn't look like it's gonna work. So I think we'll just jump into the trailer and I'll give my thoughts as I go. Already I'm actually going to pause there and just point out the Netflix here. It's interesting to note that this movie was produced not by Netflix, not funded by Netflix, but by a separate production company, and they then sold it to Netflix. Now, that indicates a lack of faith from the distributor in their product, that they didn't think it was gonna succeed. That's why they've offloaded it to Netflix. They didn't feel this would make any money if they released it theatrically, so they've offloaded it to Netflix. That's not a great sign. That reminds me of, for example, the Cloverfield paradox, the terrible Cloverfield sequel that came out in 2018. And another interesting thing to note with this movie is that it had an original director who was hired to direct the project, and I think a couple of weeks into production, that director left due to the old favourite creative differences in quotation marks, which is never a good sign. That does indicate that the original director wanted to do something artistic and make a statement, and the powers that be said, no, we'd rather you just make something bland and generic that's more easily sellable to the masses. Well, I say masses. Let's face it, who's actually paying to watch Chainsaw Massacre sequels decades after the fact? It's a niche audience, right? Anyway, let's continue with the trailer. I will say this opening moment looks pretty good. It's not bad. Lovely burr there, burr. She's managed to spread the burrs around in her car there. She's doing wonderful things for the burr community, burr representation. But let's continue anyway. Oh, that moment there. That moment. Look at him, old Leatherface there in the burr field. I say burrs. I don't know if these are burrs. They just remind me of burrs. You know, I used to have a little cat, and she used to walk in from being outside covered with burrs. But this moment of Leatherface popping up here, it looks so absurd. It's so silly. I have to question why he's even crouching down. So presumably he's chasing after this lady in the car. So why would he be crouching down, hiding? Is he playing hide and seek? Is he in stealth mode? Is Leatherface in stealth mode?
So Harlow is a ghost town.
We have a vision for this place. All it needs is young blood.
Okay, so this is one of the elements of the plot leak from last year. And to give you a basic rundown on that for this movie, is that a group of Zoomers in their early 20s decide to buy a ghost town in Texas and to make it their own. I mean, first of all, I have to wonder what sort of finances do a bunch of 20-somethings have to buy an entire town, ghost town or not, an entire town in Texas. And they do so in order to create a woke safe space that they can all live in together. I mean, that's not a great premise for a movie, is it? Particularly a Chainsaw Massacre movie. It's like, what are you doing? What's this have to do with anything? What? Why? What? No. I don't know. This is just getting off on a bad foot already, this movie. It's such a ludicrous premise for a movie. Bunch of Zoomers buy a town in Texas to create a woke safe space that they can all exist in. To create a utopia. I mean, I'm getting Jim Jones Jonestown vibes from that setup. But let's continue.
It's for people to start fresh somewhere safe.
Safe
Hey guys.
space.
You should see this.
There's the original house from the original Chainsaw Massacre. Let's go back there. She sees a photo on the wall, and you'll notice here, oh, that would be Leatherface, right, without the mask. But, rather handily, on the photograph, his face has been obscured by scratches and dust. No one else's face has. But very coincidentally, old Leatherface without the leather, just face, has been obscured. Well, that's handy, isn't it? How convenient. Oh, no.
In our house. Really shouldn't be.
I'm getting a real Chainsaw Massacre remake vibes from that. What are you doing in my house?
The hell are you doing in my house?
Boom! Oh, we had a gory kill there. Now, one of the things that was so fantastic about the original 74 Texas Chainsaw Massacre was that there really was no gore to speak of in the film. People always came away from it saying, oh, that was such a violent and gory film. But that was the genius of it, is there was so little actual blood throughout the entire film. It was the unrelenting sense of fear and anxiety and stress that culminated in people feeling that they'd seen something particularly nasty without actually seeing anything particularly nasty. That was the genius of the filmmaking. But clearly this film wants to go, no, let's just show ultra gore like it's a Saw movie or Hostel movie. It's like a way to fail to recapture the brilliance of the original film. Again, trying to capture lightning in a bottle, but also not understanding why it was lightning in the bottle in the first place. Now, from the minds that brought you Evil Dead and Don't Breathe. Well, you say that. Now that might make you think, is that Fede Alvarez from the Evil Dead remake, or is it Sam Raimi from the original Evil Dead? And is it Rodos Hagareris? I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Well, in actuality, it is Fede Alvarez and Rodos Hagares. However, they are producers for this new movie. They're not directing it. They're not writing it. I think Fede Alvarez has a story bite credit for this new movie, this new Texas Chainsaw movie. But he didn't write the script and he's not directing it. It's one of those things where it's kind of lying to the audience from the minds that brought you Evil Dead and Don't Breathe. So your average layman, your average Joe public in the audience sees that and goes, oh, it's the same writers, directors who brought us Evil Dead and Don't Breathe. Oh, alright, I'm in for that. Nah. They're just executive producing. They're just lending their name to it. They didn't write this. They didn't direct it. They didn't write the screenplay. They didn't direct it. So don't be fooled. This is a bit of a lie, to be honest. Or a half-truth is a more accurate way of putting it.
I'm afraid your old friend's back.
Okay, so this is supposed to be Sally Harvesty from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, Marilyn Burns, the actress who portrayed Sally Harvesty in the original 1974 film, has sadly passed on. So this is a new actress portraying her. But we do appear to be going down the recent Halloween sequel/reboots that came out. Halloween and Halloween Kills. Where Jamie Lee Curtis's character of Laurie was tracking down and trying to get vengeance upon Michael Myers. So we're going down that route. It seems like it's a little bit of, I want to use that plot that made money at the box office. I do have to question also how Sally has been living apparently in Texas for the last 50 years of her life after the traumatic events of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Apparently just waiting for the opportunity to have vengeance upon Leatherface. Just in case he rears up again and in case he makes himself known. Apparently it's all been quiet since the events of the original film. For 50 years though, this poor woman, Sally, has spent her entire life just waiting around just in case he ever comes up again. Just in case some creatively bankrupt studio decides they want to make a sequel decades later to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
50 years I've been waiting for this night. Just to see him again.
Who?
Leatherface.
I don't like what they've done to the design of Leatherface in this. Now, in the original, in the 1974 classic, it genuinely looked like Leatherface was a real-life serial killer, such as Ed Gein, which Texas Chainsaw Massacre was very loosely based upon, who cut off victims' faces and dried out the skin and made a real skin mask out of it. In this, he looks like someone who's gone to a Halloween store and bought a Halloween mask. He looks very much like a classical movie monster. He looks very much like just your standard template movie monster. He looks wet and slimy.
I saw him green and slimy.
Leave the poor man alone.
If he's only trying to help, you got to humor them.
And he doesn't look like an actual serial killer. What worked about the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre was how real and raw and authentic it felt. The aesthetic, the cinematography was almost documentarian in how it was presented, which only served to draw the viewer in to a sense that they were experiencing the terror alongside the protagonists. Whereas with this new movie, it's all too heavily produced. Everything is shot in a way that it looks too heavily, overly produced. And the costume on Leatherface here looks overly produced. Looks like a movie monster. Doesn't look gritty, real, authentic, and therefore all the more terrifying.
Looks like it's you that he wants.
I'm not gonna let him kill you. Fear no evil. Fear no evil.
Now, speaking of the recent Halloween movies, Fear No Evil, Fear No Evil. Does that remind anyone of anything?
Evil dies tonight.
Now here we have the by far the worst moment of the trailer. I was already prepared for this moment because of the plot leaks, which specifically mentioned this moment. But let's just watch it, because it really is even worse than I was expecting it to be.
Try anything and you're cancelled, bro.
Try anything and you're cancelled, bro. That is a line of dialogue that exists within this movie. Oh boy. Now, I've read a few comments online from people who saying, actually, I think you'll find that this is a very believable piece of dialogue. And it's exactly what people would do these days in this situation. Say, try anything and you cancel, bro. And, you know, that does not ring true to me. I call bullshit on that. Why would someone assume that a serial killer who's already killed multiple people and is wearing a flesh mask, a skin mask, and by the way, therefore his real identity is disguised so no one knows who he really is, but nonetheless he stood there, chainsaw in hand, he's preparing to literally massacre your entire group. Why would you presume that that person would care one iota about being #cancelled? What do they think? That Leatherface is afraid that they might say mean things about him on his Twitter account? Or may not get the job as the equity manager at his local law firm that he was really hoping to get? Come on, come on. This is awful. And I thought the line of dialogue in Chainsaw Massacre 3D was bad.
Do your thing, cuz.
They've somehow found a way to make an even worse line of dialogue than do your thing, cuz. It's almost impressive in how they achieved the seemingly impossible. Oh fuck, what were you expecting? So yeah, this looks like yet another terrible installment in the franchise that never should have been a franchise to begin with. Should have left it at the original film, or at a push should have left it after the very entertaining parody of the original film, which was Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. But how we've wound up here all these decades later with endless sequels and reboots and remakes of a horror masterpiece, it's all rather depressing. Having said that, 10 out of 10. This movie looks fantastic. I can hardly wait.